This day in sports history. This episode is brought to you by the Sterling Soap Company. I'm a big fan of shave soap. I've been using different brands for years, and I recently gave Sterling's shave soaps a try, and I've been very happy with the results. Sterling's shave soaps give you a great lather and a frictionless feel that allows the razor to glide right over the skin for a super close shave. No skin irritation and a clean, refreshing feel with no soapy residue after. I can tell you without a doubt, it's simply the best shave I've ever had. And my wife has noticed too. And here's the thing. With the ability to purchase 1-ounce sample pucks, you can try out different scents to find the right one for you. Give Sterling Soap a try today. Visit sterlingsoap.com. That's STIRLING soap.com. It's January 21st, and on this day in 1979, it was the first ever Super Bowl rematch. This was Super Bowl XIII between the Steelers and the Cowboys. Just a couple of days back on the 18th, I talked about Super Bowl X between these two, and of course, Pittsburgh winning that one 21-17. Now, this was the first time that teams who had faced off in a previous Super Bowl met in another one. And only being 3 years removed, there were a lot of players who'd played in that first one. This was also a star-studded affair. There were 14 future Hall of Famers playing in this one, and this was a battle of the top two defenses in the league. So, by all indications, this should have been a low-scoring affair. And while the defenses certainly played a role, this was definitely not a low-scoring game. Tied at 7 after the first quarter, the Cowboys' doomsday defense put some points on the board with this play. Calling the action that day for NBC was Curt Gowdy.
Third down 10, Steelers on their 48. Fumble. Bradshaw has it. Oh, he hit. Thomas Henderson up with it. Going in with it. Number 58, Mike Hegman. And it is a recovered fumble. Henderson jarred it loose from Bradshaw. And going in with it, Mike Hegman from Tennessee State.
It didn't take long for Pittsburgh to answer right back. 3 plays later, Bradshaw found one of his favorite targets. Here's the voice of the Steelers, Jack Fleming, with the call that day.
Third down and 5. Slot right formation. Bradshaw is back there, and he fires. Caught by Stallworth at the 35, breaks a tackle, comes over the 40, the 45, the 50. He's breaking downfield, going to the Dallas 30, the 20, the 10, the 5. A touchdown for Pittsburgh.
That made it 14 apiece, and Pittsburgh would add another one before the end of the half to make it 21-14 Steelers at the break. This Super Bowl is remembered, however, for one unfortunate play in the second half. Dallas tight end Jackie Smith was a 16-year NFL veteran. He'd spent the first 15 years of his career with the St. Louis Cardinals and had actually retired after a neck injury in 1977. But the Cowboys had talked him out of retirement to play one more season. Smith had never played in a Super Bowl and saw his chance with the Cowboys. In the third quarter, his dream of playing in one turned into a nightmare.
Staubach brings Dorson in motion. He's back to throw, wide open. End zone, dropped it. He went to Jackie Smith. And down in the turf, he lost it. Wide open. Jackie Smith from the tight end post. There was nobody there. He was right between the E's and Steeler in the end zone.
The Cowboys settled for a Rafael Septien field goal, and it was 21-17. Now, this game is also known for a couple of favorable calls that the Steelers got in the fourth quarter. On a third down play, a pass interference call on Benny Barnes gave the Steelers a fresh set of downs at the Cowboy 23. Staubach called it the worst call in the history of football. Even Commissioner Pete Rozelle said the PI on Barnes was a bad call. The Steelers took advantage of their good fortune, though, with a touchdown. Now, Franco Harris was really pissed off at Dallas linebacker Thomas Hollywood Henderson for some taunts earlier in the game. And he looked at Bradshaw in the huddle and he said, "Give me the ball." Bradshaw also had a bone to pick with Hollywood in the week leading up to the game. Henderson had bragged about how bad the Cowboys were going to beat the Steelers, and that Bradshaw was so stupid he couldn't spell cat if he spotted him the C and the A. So Bradshaw told Franco to shove it down Hollywood's throat. And so he did. 28-17 Steelers. Disaster struck for the Cowboys again on the ensuing kickoff.
Used to work these things. Here's Jarrella scrimming the kick down short inside the 25. Picked up at the 24. Fumble! Ball loose! Still fighting for it at the 21. It is the Steelers football.
So a couple of things there. Pittsburgh's kicker Roy Jarrella did not mean to kick a short squibber, but he slipped as he planted, and that was the result. The Dallas return man, Randy White, was really a linebacker, and his left arm was covered by a cast, and he couldn't grip the football. He should have lateraled it, but instead he tried to run with it, and he lost it. It only took one play for Pittsburgh to bury the dagger.
Cowboys are calling for quiet. Bradshaw is back, and he's going to Swan, and Swan makes a circus catch in the end zone. Unbelievable catch for the touchdown. Swan beat two men. Cliff Harris was one of them, and Benny Barnes the other. He went up in the air and made a circus catch. He looked like a flying circus, and the Southern Cal Flyer pulled it in. Holy smokes, 18 yards, and they strike again.
At that point, it's 35-17 Steelers, and they started celebrating on the sideline. Now, the other thing that Pittsburgh did was go into a prevent defense, which Staubach picked apart on an 89-yard drive that ended in a Billy Joe Dupree touchdown to narrow the margin to 35-24. And then Dallas recovered the onside kick, and Staubach marched them down the field again. He hooked up with Butch Johnson, and after the PAT, the lead was down to 4. The difference between a touchdown and a field goal. Dallas tried the onside kick again, but this time it was recovered by the Steelers. The combined 66 points in this one set a new Super Bowl record that stood until 1993, when the Cowboys beat Buffalo 52-17 in Super Bowl XXVII. Terry Bradshaw completed 17 passes for 318 yards and 3 touchdowns and was named Most Valuable Player. When asked after the game about all the pregame talk by Henderson, he said, "Ask him if he can spell MVP." On this day in 1990, John McEnroe became the first tennis player to be kicked out of the Australian Open for misconduct. In fact, he was the first tennis player to ever be ejected from a tennis major. McEnroe was always a firebrand, ever since breaking in as a pro in the late 70s. Love him or hate him, he was always entertaining to watch. A great serve and volley player that won him 7 majors between 79 and 84, but his acerbic nature could be tough to handle for courtside linesmen and chair umpires. Well, on this day, McEnroe was in a 4th-round match with Sweden's Michael Pernfors. During a changeover in the 3rd set, McEnroe was upset at a lineswoman who he thought had made a poor call. He stepped in front of her, stared her down without speaking, and juggled 2 tennis balls on his racket. The chair ump called the first code violation for unsportsmanlike conduct. In the 7th game of the 4th set, McEnroe missed a shot wide, and he was mad at himself, throwing the racket to the hard court surface in disgust. After another poor shot, McEnroe threw his racket again.
Advantage Pernfors. Code violation, racket abuse, point penalty, Mr. McEnroe.
At that point, McEnroe started yelling at chair umpire Jerry Armstrong, demanding that the chair supervisor come out. And once he did, McEnroe dropped a word that he probably shouldn't have.
Code violation, verbal abuse, default, Mr. McEnroe.
So when the ump said default, that meant the match was over. McEnroe had been disqualified. Now, what McEnroe did not know or didn't remember is that the previous 4-step default process that had been the rule had been changed to a 3-step default process, or 3 code violations and you're out. Up 2 sets to 1 but down 2-4 in the 4th, McEnroe was disqualified and fined $6,500.
They went by the rule. I mean, they could have let me off. They could have said, in the heat of the moment, it's not really what you're saying to the person. You're upset about the fact that they just taken the point away for me to lose my serve. After you play for 3 hours and, judge, it's not like everyone heard what I said. It was between me and 2 people. So I think that it was unnecessary to default me in that situation.
And from one well-known screamer to another. On this day in 1984, Bobby Knight let Bill Frieder have an earful after their game in Ann Arbor. Michigan had just handed Knight's Hoosiers a 55-50 loss at Chrysler Arena. Now, Knight was not happy about the loss, but what really lit the fuse on Knight's tirade this time was what Frieder did in the waning minutes of the game. The Hoosiers had put on a furious comeback, and they were within striking distance when Coach Knight was protesting a call with one of the Big Ten officials, as he and every coach is known to do. Well, seeing that, Frieder walked a few steps toward midcourt and yelled, "Give him a T!" Knight had already gotten 2 of them. Another one would mean his ejection. Knight saw Frieder's interjection as breaking an unwritten rule in the yet-to-be-written code of coaching. When Knight got to the post-game press conference, he lit into Frieder, who was waiting in the wings. Now, it's kind of surprising that I couldn't find any part of this game or the post-game outburst, but according to the 50 or so who were in the room and heard it, Knight said, "Frieder, you're a chicken son of a bitch." And there were additional words said, but you probably get the gist. Despite the fact that the press room had university officials from both schools, along with recruits, along with their parents, the outburst did not cost Knight anything. So, unlike Johnny Mack, Coach Knight faced no fine or suspension. And in 2019, a small plane carrying soccer player Emiliano Sala went down in the English Channel, killing him and the pilot David Ibbitsen. Sala had recently signed a $19 million transfer to play for Cardiff City in Wales from Nantes in France. Both Ibbitsen and Sala expressed concerns about the plane and its ability to fly before boarding and taking off. And time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. The writer F. Scott Fitzgerald plagiarized his own wife's diary.
What did you say?
Zelda was such a good writer that F. Scott lifted entire passages for his book, The Beautiful and the Damned. When she read the book, she recognized her own writing and was not pleased. Those who knew the couple claimed that Fitzgerald stoked the rumors of her fragile mental state as a way to hide his cavalier theft of her words.
What you talking about, Willis?
This has been an original Thrive Suite production.